Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and I have as my guest today Kay Elam with Emmaus Women's Shelter. And we are so glad to have you today, Kay.
Wanda, I thank you so much for this opportunity. I cannot tell you how deeply I appreciate an opportunity to speak with you and to the people of our fair city.
Okay, let's talk about the Emmaus Women's Shelter. How did the Emmaus Women's Shelter come about, Kay?
Wanda, it was cold in 2008, and we joined a group of about 16 concerned people who were meeting regularly to find out what could be done and to look for solutions to the problem of homeless moms.
Yes.
And we joined, I say we, Shirley Andrews and I, joined that group, and we met with them in November twice and in December, and by mid-December the burden was so heavy on our hearts till we got really busy in finding not more meetings but a solution to the problem. And in the late February of 2009, we opened the day center of what is now known as Emmaus Women's Shelter. We had a washer and a dryer, a shower, we served 2 meals a day, and we let women come there and begin to solve the problems that were keeping them homeless.
Yes. And so the Emmaus Women's Shelter is open to any woman who finds herself homeless. Is that correct?
That sounds wonderful,
That
Wanda.
does, and that's not correct, is
That's
it?
not quite
right.
correct. We are open to any woman who is clean and sober
Yes.
and finds herself homeless for whatever reason. There is another shelter, and we work closely with Harmony House in our community, but they have a restriction on the women that they can serve. We, however, do not have that restriction.
That's right. Now, how do you define homelessness?
Well, homelessness, a person is homeless if they are living in a place that is either not suitable for human habitation.
Yes.
Now, let's look at some of those places. That could be a vehicle, a barn, a neighbor's garage, an abandoned warehouse, an abandoned trailer. These places are no longer considered humanly habitable. Women are also homeless if they are living in a place that is not secure, that is not permanent, and is not their own. They are not on the lease. She is not participating in the rent. She is living there at the discretion of someone else. And technically she is homelessness because she does not have a place to call home.
Yes. And so tell me, in your experience, what are some of the reasons that people become homeless?
Oh, there are as many reasons for homelessness as there are homeless people, but let's talk about a few of the most common ones.
Okay.
Let's talk about Ann. Ann came in, had been living in the back of her truck with 2 teenage boys. Ann had come back from a tour of duty in Iraq to her home and her husband in North Carolina. He met her at the door with the car keys in his hand with an "I'm done" speech.
Huh.
She mustered out of the military and called home and said, it's going to be about 30 days, but I'm going to be there with my boys. I'm going to need some help. You are welcome to come home. We will help you get this straightened out. No problem, was what her family said. Unfortunately, in the interim between her finishing up with the military and arriving in LaGrange, Milliken had a huge layoff and nearly every man in her family lost his job,
Oh, no.
leaving her without the resources that she had depended on.
Yes.
Anne was a very creative woman, and she was with at the library, looking through the library, and found a tiny little blurb in the paper where we had asked the citizens of our town to help us with toilet paper, paper towels, paper plates, and things like that. And she said, if they need paper plates, they can help me.
Yes.
And appeared at our front door. The interesting story is by this time, of course, we had opened an overnight shelter. We quickly learned that we weren't going to make it with a day center.
Yes.
And so we gave her directions to the overnight shelter and told her to knock on the back door and the house mother would meet her. All of those things happened, and she walked in, and the house mother said, Miss Kay, I was scared to death. She was crying like a baby. I could not imagine what was so wrong about our house that she would not want to stay there. And when she got her breath, she said, "Oh, thank you, Jesus. It's a house. It's not a warehouse like you see on television." And so with that relief, she and her boys moved in.
Yes.
In about 45 days, she was employed, had found housing for her and her boys, and was out. So she's our star resident. She really is.
Yes, she is. And so, what are some of the services that you offer to the women who come through the Emmaus Women's Shelter?
We offer overnight shelter for women who have no place to go. In our day center, however, we have a lot richer service facility. We offer, as I've already mentioned, a shower. We have a laundromat. We have a washer and dryer.
Yes.
We have a couple of computers that the women use to find housing, to find employment. We've even had young women to reconnect with family and leave LaGrange, headed back for Washington State, where she could connect with family and friends after the death of her mother. We have a food bank there where we receive food from the Feeding the Valley Food Bank and distribute it to the citizens of our community. A lot better resources. We have mentors, we have workshops, we have a lot of things going on at our day center. It's always busy.
Yes, it is. All right, and then who is homeless in Troup County?
Well, the homeless picture in Troup County is so typical of rural homelessness across the nation. First, let me clarify between rural homelessness and urban homelessness. You go to the movie and you see a man in ragged clothes and layers, and he's sleeping in a doorway. He hasn't had a shower in 40 forevers. That's more clearly the face of urban homelessness. Rural homelessness is so different. First off, it's primarily women. And second off, 40% of those women have children with them.
Yes.
16% of the people that we serve are over 50 years of age. 35% of them have graduated from high school. Some of them even have some college.
Yes.
So it's not the face of homelessness that we expect from the media. Homeless people in the rural community generally try to hide more than they do in the urban community. The anger has built up, the resentment has built up, and they're just right out there in your face. There are parts of Atlanta that are very difficult to walk through because of the homeless population. That's not true here in our community. We never see the homeless women. They go to the grocery store like we do. They buy snack foods like we do, but they're piling them up perhaps in their car to make, and with 3 little children stuffed in the back seat, and everything that she owns is in that car. I've met women. Gwinnell was an interesting woman.
Yes.
She walked down the street in front of our day center day after day. A child's baby buggy piled up with dirty clothes and apparently everything she owned. As I learned later, it was not. Second day she walked by, they all happened to be at the mailbox and spoke to her. "Hello, how are you? It's nice to see you." Not a word. Kept right on going. By the third day, she was cold, and it was February. She was ready for a little help and
Yes.
mustered up her courage and answered me. And I said, "You know, I've got a cup of coffee on my desk. I would love to pour one for you. Come on in and just get warm and spend a little time with us. Is that laundry?" She said, "Yes, it is." I said, "You know, we got a washer and dryer. Why don't you just do your laundry here and don't spend your money at the laundromat?" So in she came, and she had a bowl of beef stew for lunch and a cup of hot chocolate and a cup of coffee, and I couldn't seem to fill her up. And I thought, wow, this is not what it appears to be. As she did her laundry, one of our mentors sat down with her and talked and learned that she was from Jacksonville, Florida. She was here with her husband, and they were sleeping in a tent behind Solomon Grove Baptist Church.
Huh.
The pastor there had left the water on the outside so that she could get water.
Yes.
She had a little camping stove that she used to cook food, to heat canned goods, but that her husband really needed to see a doctor. And so we loaded up a food box for her. We got her clothes washed, and I said, "You know, let me just take you back out there." No, you can't take me. I said, "Trust me, there's not much that I haven't seen. I'll take you out there."
Yes.
So Gwinnell and I drove out to her little tent out there with her husband, who was just terrified of this strange woman coming up, and she introduced me. And I learned that then from the mentor, that they were from Jacksonville and had family that was looking for them, but they had been out of contact for a year.
Wow.
She used our telephone to call. We collaborated with Salvation Army to get a bus ticket, and we sent her and her husband and their belongings back to Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes. Now, what about him needing to see a doctor? Did he see a doctor here?
He did not see a doctor here. He was a military veteran.
Okay.
And he needed to get back to a VA facility where he could get some long-term care. And that's why the very next day they were on a bus to go back.
That's great.
The interesting thing, Wanda, is when she got back, it was about 10 o'clock at night, and my cell phone rang. And I didn't recognize the number, but I picked it up and said hello. And she said, "Miss Kay, this is Gwinnell." And there was 7 people at the bus station.
Wow.
They all thought we was dead.
Wow.
We are in the business of restoring families, Wanda, whenever it's possible. Sometimes there are so many burned bridges that it's not possible.
Yes.
But that's what we want to do, is to restore families.
Yeah, and that really took not so much effort, right? In that
Not so much
situation.
effort, listening, caring, and some resources.
Yes. And resources are so important.
They are, and LaGrange is rich with resources.
Yes, they
the
are.
problem is connecting people to the resources.
That's right. Okay, so how many people do you serve at the Emmaus Women's Shelter?
Well, that's interesting that you would ask. I have just finished my numbers for the year, and we have served 850 families at Emmaus Women's Shelter this year.
This year?
Almost double what we served in 2012.
Wow. Now tell us how you serve them.
Sure. We serve intact families. We serve them by providing them with food boxes.
Yes.
We provide them with housing counseling. Maybe she comes in and she says, "We're going to be evicted," and I can begin to counsel her on how to delay the eviction, how to find new housing, and we give her the resources to do that with. That is a way that we serve intact families. We serve homeless women, women who walk in off the street, can get 2 meals a day, do their laundry, and take a hot shower, as we have mentioned. They're also accessible to our case management. That's where they get mentoring skills, resources, the kinds of things that she's going to need to get out of homelessness, if that's her desire. If not, if she is completely happy being a homeless woman sleeping in her car, that's fine. We'll give her a warm place to spend the day, or in the summer, a cooler place to spend the day, where she can talk with people who want to share her burden, who want to help her, who want to teach her the advantages of coming back into society.
Yes. And so you're preventing homelessness
Yes,
also.
we are. We prevent homelessness.
Yes, and you do that through the food boxes and
through the mentoring and through the counseling.
Yes. Now tell me, who can get a food box?
That's a difficult question to answer in its simplicity. Anyone who is eligible for a food box may walk in, and you determine your own eligibility. We don't ask you a bunch of questions. We're not inquiring about how you got into this mess. We want you to fill out the form, look at that little box, and don't even mark it. Don't even put an X or circle. Just find your income and your household size, and if it's at or below that number, then you are welcome to a food box, and we'll be glad to fix it for you.
And how often do they get a food box?
You may come twice a month.
Yes.
If it's 2 times straight in a row because your pantry is completely empty, that's fine. But it will be the first of the next month. Most of our 600 or 700 families come about the first and about the middle of the month.
Yes. Okay. And so, it's really been cold lately.
It really has.
So you've had some experience at the shelter with people coming in who have been
out in the cold.
Out in the cold.
Literally out in the cold.
Tell us about that.
I would like to. We have, our day center doors are open from 8:30 until 4:30 every day. And all these days, we have had women drift in who just really aren't ready to submit to the authority of shelter, but who have been sleeping in a car, generally without children, and who have been sleeping in a garage or in an unheated house. My utilities are cut off and I'm sleeping in the house. And they are welcome to come to our day center, soak up the warm, soak up a good hot meal,
Yes.
and then spend the day with us until 4:30, and then We will, if it's at all possible, help you find a place warmer to spend the night if that's what you want. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes they don't want that. They're perfectly content to sleep in their car. And that's, I close my eyes and say this, it's okay.
Yes.
That's her choice. But we want to be of service however we can to that homeless woman.
So how many women at night do you have in the night shelter?
We have 8 bunk beds and a family room.
Okay.
Now that family room has a twin bed and cots.
Yes.
Kids sleep on cots and we can sleep up to 3.
Okay. And so on the average, are you full?
On the average, we are full. 8 is considered full.
Uh-huh.
On the average, we sleep 9 to 11 almost every night.
9 to 11. Okay. And so how long do they stay there?
Our initial goal is to have a woman pointed in the right direction in 21 days. If she has a legitimate opportunity for employment, then she may negotiate for another 21 days to give her an opportunity to save some money to put about. I had a woman sit in my office yesterday, and we have been through the intake process, and she got to the very end of it and said, "What is it going to cost me to stay here?" And I said, "Oh, darling, nothing.
Yes.
We will provide your rent and utilities. We will provide your food, give you a computer to use while you're here. We will do anything we can to help you, but it's not going to cost you a dime."
Yes. Okay. And so if it doesn't cost her a dime,
Where do we get our money?
yes, where does the money come from?
We get our money from the generous people of LaGrange and Troup County. We do not receive any state or federal funding. We do not receive any, we just don't take it. It comes in a lot of different ways and we could. We just choose not to because we really want to be able to tell women about our Savior and Lord Jesus Christ. And we want to
Yes.
do that freely.
Yes.
And that becomes restricted when you take certain kinds of money. We do receive a couple of grants a year from industries or from family grants, family foundations that support us regularly.
Yes.
But everything we get that we operate on comes from the citizens of LaGrange.
Yes, and for a while we had a grant from the Callaway Association.
We did.
Yes, and it was a 3-year grant, and
It was.
and that's very much appreciated, that generosity. And I have been amazed at the generosity of LaGrange in supporting the Emmaus Women's Shelter financially and also with donations. And tell us what you do with those donations of clothing and furniture that you get from the community.
Well, when I got married and left home, my mom, bless her heart, emptied her attic and basement, and I furnished my first house with what I call late attic and early basement.
Yes?
I had the china that she didn't particularly care for. I took with me the silverware that she had changed for new, and my grandmother's furniture. Well, by the time a woman reaches a homeless shelter, Wanda, she doesn't have any of those if she ever had them to begin with.
Yes.
So when a woman leaves, we launch her with furnishings that we have available, with the things that she's going to need to start her kitchen, with the things that she's going to need to start her new home. And our attic has those. We call that Emma's attic. Yes, that's the first 4 letters of Emmaus. You're
Yes.
right. We call that Emma's attic. And we have all of these wonderful, generous donations that we have stored there. And we give her the clothes that she needs for an interview, the clothes that she needs to wear to work,
Yes.
the clothes that she needs to go to church if she does not have those things. We will launch her with sheets and towels and pillowcases and pillows and blankets and a bed if we have one.
Yes.
And so that's what becomes of all of the things that you give us. Now we would have to serve thousands of women to match the generosity of our community. So we open Emma's Attic 2 weekends a month to the community where the working poor, where moms can come and shop for their children, for themselves, for their families. Let me tell you a sweet story. I love to tell stories.
Yes, I
guess
love
you can
it too.
tell.
Yeah.
I was straightening out in the attic, rehanging things that had been tossed and stuff like that. And I heard a little couple just one row over from me, looking at a garment. And she said, "Robert, it's so pretty. And your mama would love this. And look, all of the buttons are wonderful, wonderful quality of donations that we receive."
Yes. Yes, and there are some really great buys
There are.
there at the Emma Attic, and I know that it's not just the working poor that come there and
No,
shop.
it's not. It's me.
Yeah.
How do you like my coat?
Yeah, that's right. And you have some shoes
And I
that
have
you got
shoes from Emma's Attic
there.
this morning.
Yes, and so it is great, and it helps. Emma's Attic, the sales help support the Emmaus Women's Shelter
absolutely.
also.
When a woman comes in and purchases a suit for $3 or a dress for $1 or a pair of shoes for $1, that money goes directly into supporting the ongoing operations of Emmaus Women's Shelter.
Yes. Okay, so now, Kay, I know that probably all of us have seen somebody that seems to be homeless on the street, and lots of times we don't know what to tell them. So if someone sees a woman and thinks that they're homeless, what would you advise that person say to that woman to help them on their way?
Let me tell you what I did on Saturday
Okay.
at Kroger. There was a woman parked in the parking lot, and she had just put 2 bags of groceries into an overstuffed vehicle. I've been around long enough to know what that meant. She was probably sleeping in that vehicle.
Uh-huh.
So I tapped on her window and I said, "Boy, it's cold, isn't it?" And she said, "Well, it's really going to be colder than this." And I said, "You know, you may not know, but LaGrange has a women's homeless shelter, and it's over on Greenville Street. And here, I've got a piece of paper." And I quickly wrote down our address and our telephone number.
Uh-huh.
And I just gave it to her. I said, "I don't know if you need this, but I bet you know somebody who does."
Yes.
I didn't approach her about how she was dressed or how she smelled or how the car smelled. None of that. I just made an offer of assistance. And you can do that anywhere, anytime. You're advertising for Emmaus Women's Shelter. I know about Emmaus Women's Shelter, and if you don't need this, I bet you know, or we'll find somebody who does. And give her an opportunity to feel like she can not only get assistance, but give assistance to a sister.
Yes, and you know, sometimes we hear about that there might be homeless people sleeping under a bridge or behind Walmart or different places. Do you have an idea about that, Kay? Is that just rumor, or where could
No.
you find
It's not
homeless
rumor.
people?
It's not rumor. I was so surprised to learn about the tent cities. I asked a police officer, and he said, "Oh, yeah, they're out there." I said, "What are they like?" He said, "Come with me." And I went with him to the one that's on the bridge across the street from the food depot.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, had realized when I just kind of peeked around and saw what was going on, I realized we had served a woman who was sleeping there. She had come in and done laundry with us. I recognized her. Just threw up my hand and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" But yes, they're really out there, Wanda. I couldn't begin to guess how many people are being served. It looked like about 20 lived there.
Really?
They have a latrine. They have a kitchen area. They have sleeping areas. It's just like a tiny little town out there. And it's really unnerving to me to realize that I have 8 beds, and yes, mine are almost always full,
Yes.
but that there is such a desperate need in our community.
Yes.
There is a huge, for me, it's a huge population if it's 2 people.
Yes.
There is a population of people who are not being reached.
Okay, so what can we do to help solve the problem of homelessness in our community?
Find a program that's working and support it. We have 8 beds. Wow, if I had operating expenses, if I had operating funds enough, I would open another house today.
Yes.
And I could fill that one almost immediately because everyone that's in my house knows somebody who is needing shelter and services.
Yes. Now, I want to ask you something. Before you met with that committee that was looking for a way to address the needs of women, was that dream already in your heart?
You asked the most poignant questions. Yes, it was. As a young mother, I worked in Atlanta for the Department of Family and Children's Services and lived way out in DeKalb County toward the north perimeter of 285. And I watched as homelessness began to move from inner city Atlanta out toward my neighborhood. And I was just appalled when I moved back to LaGrange to see those same early symptoms coming into our community. I took a tour of my hometown and saw what change had taken place since my marriage and my departure from LaGrange. And then I was just convinced that I was not going to let that happen without my doing something about it in our community.
All right, and you know, I had noticed that there seemed to be some people on the square during a period of time that seemed to be homeless, but now I'm not seeing those people, and I'm hoping that they have received some services that they needed and have been taken off the street and cared for, and so I appreciate what the Emmaus Women's Shelter is doing. And I have seen for myself the numbers of women who are coming through there, the difference in the lives of the women that's made. And I just want to say that we appreciate what you do. And I just want to take a few minutes to say that we appreciate what the community does for Emmaus Women's Shelter. As this committee reached out to the community, it was met with generous support, not only in finances, but also in providing for the needs of these women, and also the volunteers that came forth to work in the Emmaus Women's Shelter. And I want to say that Kay and Shirley and Jessica at the Emmaus Women's Shelter are very creative women, and they can find a spot for you if you want to volunteer there, and they will use your creativity, they will use your great ideas to bring the betterment to the community of women who are healthy and sound and have a place to live. And I would just like to thank you for watching You Make the Difference, and to say to all those who have supported the Emmaus Women's Shelter that you have truly made a difference in the lives of these women.